Hi, I'm Brendan Croak, the Marketing Manager at Integral. You're about to watch a 40-minute presentation, a pre-recorded webinar titled The State of Facebook and Higher Ed Admissions. In this, we'll cover the latest Facebook updates, new research, and best practices to engage admitted and current students. Hope you enjoy. Once again, the hashtag is State of Facebook, SOFB12, and I'm Brandon Croak, at bcroak. If you want to tweet with me, we also have somebody else working on the back channel. So the question I want to start off today, I want to start off with a question. I want to start with the question, what is social media? And if you guys could tweet the answers to SOFB12, would love to hear your thoughts. And while you guys are kind of thinking about that, I'll give you a little bit about my background. So I am the marketing manager at Integral. I've been working in social media for about half a decade. I started off working at Hobson's, a higher ed marketing technology company, and then later worked for an agency doing social media strategy for a bunch of big brands and different companies that was extremely interesting, but I wanted to get back into education, and that's when I got on Integral's radar and I met Michael Staten at South by Southwest, and I was looking to do marketing at a education startup, and he was looking for somebody that had a background in both higher ed and social media. So it was really a perfect fit, and I've been here for about a year and couldn't be happier with all the things that have been going on and the things we've been learning, and really just kind of engaging with the higher ed community in general, because I think you guys are awesome and I appreciate you checking it out. So does anybody have answers? What is social media? Do we have any answers? Well, I don't have anything yet, so I guess you guys want to hear about Facebook, so we can just go ahead and get started. So the agenda today is we're going to start with what's Facebook up to now. We're just going to give you the updates of what's going on. I'm sure you know about the changes, but I want to make sure everybody's up to speed on some of the latest and greatest with what's going on with Facebook. Then we're going to break down the class of 2016. We're going to look at Facebook communities that schools are using, specifically admissions offices, to welcome their incoming class. And then we're going to talk about kind of Facebook success metrics. And my key goal is to convince you that Facebook friends, the amount of Facebook friends your students have, is more important than the amount of Facebook likes you might have on your page. So to get started, I want to do a little social media soapbox. The other day I came across an article, just yesterday. I wasn't going to present about this, but I saw this article and it really just rubbed me the wrong way. And this is kind of my biggest pet peeve with working in social media and marketing for over the years is here's the article. This insane graphic shows how ludicrously complicated social media marketing is now. This just came out a few days ago. And then they show this graphic. And social media consultants spend a lot of times breaking down these different networks and showing you all these trends, but I feel like overall they try to complicate things beyond a level that's really worthwhile for anybody, and they try to show you this amount of networks. And I can imagine a lot of administrators who aren't too familiar with social media can get overwhelmed by trying to keep up with the latest and greatest of social media networks. Well, I'm here to say that you don't have to pay attention to this stuff. Really what you need to be paying attention with is you need to focus and you need to prioritize and you need to measure. So the quote I've been saying lately is that social networks aren't Pokemon. You don't have to catch them all. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Pokemon, but they are a little cartoon that I used to watch way back in the day, and the goal was to collect all the Pokemon. And these little Pokemon balls remind me a lot of the social networks, the shiny objects that people are chasing after. And what I want to tell you is that if your strategy is to join every single network and to get students to join you on every single network, that is a recipe for failure. So that's just, I want to get that off my chest before we dive into things. And let's get started with what's going on with Facebook's recent changes. So you all saw that timeline for brand and profile pages are now up and going. The groups for schools has been launched at a bunch of schools in higher ed, and then the latest change was the mobile page manager app. So I know everybody, as much as I say that Facebook's the #1 medium you need to be on to be engaging students, and I truly believe that, the thing you do have to deal with with Facebook is all the changes. Some of these changes are significant, and some of these changes aren't as significant. And we did a bunch of research around the timeline brand page, and a lot of other people have too. So sometimes what the findings are in the research is there is no findings, or something is not significant, which isn't as fun as being able to say, well, engagement is increased by 50%, but it's still important to know kind of where things stand with Facebook and what they're up to. So you guys may have seen the Page Manager app. It's a mobile app for your iPhone, and it's going to help you manage basically everything you do on a Facebook page. It's a separate iPhone application, and it's going to put it all in one place on your mobile to go. So you got your insights, your posts, who is liking and commenting. To my thing, it's not that exciting. I know we kind of live in a 24/7 response culture if we're managing these social media accounts, but I don't think an iPhone application is going to kind of revolutionize what I'm going to be doing with Facebook. So it's an update. It's not released yet in the US. Last time I checked, it is released in Canada and New Zealand, which is kind of ironic, but we just did a blog post about that to show you the updates. I might be tweeting that out from the Integral account now. The big thing, Groups for Schools came out. Mashable had a big article about it, and lots of schools are really curious of, how is this going to kind of affect my presence, and how is this going to affect my page and whatnot. So to give you a breakdown of Groups for Schools, basically it's a university umbrella to kind of categorize groups at your university. So they're the same old groups that you might be using, but they're really just now have a barricade. To get in, you need a .edu address. So here is a Groups for Schools from my alma mater. I'm an alum of Ohio University, beautiful Athens, Ohio, and here is the Groups for Schools I'm a part of. Well, I'm not a part of these groups, but I'm a part of the whole network of groups. And I've been kind of monitoring the activity, and it's taken off a little bit, not too much activity. Some schools don't have it yet. Some schools are getting a lot of activity. It's kind of a wait and see game for Groups for Schools. But basically, here's the rundown: is that current groups you requires an EDU, but current groups can't integrate into the Groups for Schools. So if you're managing groups, these will not go under those. The biggest thing I think for higher ed is there's no administrative control. So you have no way to kind of monitor or have the official presence. And according to Mayon at Oberlin, she said about 95% of the groups she saw at Oberlin College had no activity, and about 50% of the groups had less than one member. So my takeaway for admissions offices is to make sure if you have Groups for Schools at your school, and then go ahead and join those and monitor any spaces that are relevant to admissions, because I know some admissions offices give away their EDU address to admitted students. So it's just another place for you to monitor. I know there's a lot of things happening on Facebook and social media, but you should definitely keep an eye on if students are congregating there, to keep an eye on what the conversations are having, because listening is always the first step for a good strategy. So the next thing you guys are sure well familiar with is the timeline for brand pages, and we're going to break down some of the changes here. This is Berkeley, one of our clients who use the Schools app. They have a great page. I love following what they are posting. Almost every week they're changing their timeline page, and the biggest thing is you're losing your default landing tab, and so you have to choose 3 different icons up at the top. So kind of choose wisely of what you want students to be able to do. There's what we've seen from some schools. They said they've seen 20% less engagement on their Facebook tabs with the new timeline format, mainly because there's no default landing tab. So this might be kind of something less and less of your strategy. Facebook actually came out and said this was a mistake for them to allow somebody to have that kind of custom tab, and it's really taking you out of a controlled Facebook experiment. So they're moving away from tabs as kind of a main entity within Facebook, even though brands really kind of took advantage of those. Now you can direct message pages, which is nice if you've got kind of Q&As, private Q&As. I haven't heard schools say that they've gotten a lot of direct messages, but it is a new capability with the brand pages. And of course, the pinning of the new content, you can basically take any piece of content that you find relevant and put it up on the front of the page. So the big example I have is this: if you have a deadline or announcement, you say this week, this thing is X, Y, or Z is due. After you post that, the week later, if you need a reminder of the final due date, you can kind of repost it and pin it at the top of your page. One of the things to notice is that where students used to have the whole space on the wall to kind of have that conversation, there's now kind of 20% less space for student conversations to take place. And so everybody uses Facebook pages and groups differently, but what we found is that now with Facebook Timeline and the brand pages is there's less space and less of a call to action for students to kind of engage with each other, and it's more kind of thrown in this corner of the page, which we think is really disappointing from our standpoint. We believe that building communities for your incoming students is the best way to get them to socialize, meet friends, get excited about their school experience. So overall, we are bearish on Facebook pages, but the data that we analyzed a bunch of Facebook pages who had conversations, and we found there was no difference in engagement if you had a timeline page or not. So right now the stats are showing that there's no difference in engagement between a timeline page and an original page. We took 10 schools that went to timeline, we took 10 schools that didn't go to timeline, and we looked at the conversation levels, and we found no significant difference. So other people have found the same things, that there's no difference in engagement with their original Facebook page and now their new timeline page. So the timeline thing, it's great, you have more imagery, but overall it's not anything that's revolutionizing the kind of higher ed enrollment experience. So today we're going to talk about what schools are doing for admissions, and obviously most schools are using the Facebook page. Most schools, or half the schools, are using the page or a group. And then we're also going to talk about the schools app, which is what we offer on Facebook for that kind of private social network for enrollment management. So we looked at 160 schools and kind of took a random sample from the IPEDS database of the Higher Ed Directory, and we found these trends with the schools. And so this is kind of a snapshot of what schools are currently doing. This is the best snapshot I've seen to date, because typically the surveys that are asking people to say, hey, what are you doing on Facebook? Those are usually going to be responded to by people who are super Facebook savvy and who are on Twitter to kind of take those surveys. So here's the snapshot and the kind of lay of the land is all schools have a school-wide Facebook page. Half of schools and admissions offices are using a class of 2016 page or a group. And we're going to break down the kind of pros and cons between a page or a group. And then 30% of admissions offices have a Facebook admissions page, basically, their presence on Facebook. And the most interesting thing I found is that 75% of the schools we looked at, 3/4, have somebody else who's creating a class of 2016 group or page, really to kind of get the students in there so they can market to them. So there's a lot of third parties that are using that space because they know it's such an important community to market. There's a roommate matching application that they're using these to market. So make sure you know that you own your brand space, and go ahead and do a search for the different pages, because whoever gets there first and gets the kind of critical mass to build the community, that's where that community kind of stays. So taking a step back and talking about students, the school-wide Facebook page, according to Noel Levitt's last year, 27% of students reported visiting a school's Facebook page in their college search. And if you kind of bring up the admissions funnel, a lot of schools are thinking that social media is going to be this magic bullet to their recruiting, but it's really not that important for kind of prospects and inquiries. Your Facebook and really engaging students with Facebook is really going to fall down further down in the funnel where that admit population. It's really when students have more of a high touch and want more of a relationship, that's when Facebook and social media is really going to come into the picture. Until then, obviously the students are visiting your school-wide Facebook page, but this isn't probably going to revolutionize your enrollment or your applicants. The kind of reactions from students that we've surveyed to say that students go there to kind of check things out, to see what's happening at the school, but it's really one of many different resources that they're using, and that schools shouldn't try to kind of bet their enrollment on a Facebook page rather than focus on how to kind of maximize yield at the admit stage. And some of you guys maybe say, no duh, some of you guys might disagree, but the kind of general consensus I've talked to all the kind of thought leaders in higher ed is really that high level, high touch stage with the admets, and to kind of reduce summer melt. That's where you should be focusing your social media efforts. So we're going to talk about admitted student communities and some of the trends we've seen with them. So you've got your class of 2016 page, some of you are using class of 2016 groups, and some of you may be using our private network, the schools app, which I saw a bunch of our current clients are in there. Thanks everybody for joining us to the webinar. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the class of 2016 page, here's a great example. This is Loyola University in Chicago. They presented at CASE Social Media Conference a few weeks back, and I was in Chicago with them. I love what they're doing, and the biggest reason they said that they wanted to use the class of 2016 page is to have those calls to action and the Facebook tabs, to make your deposit, visit, and the residence halls. They really want to have that space for students to come in and engage on Facebook. And We're going to talk a little bit about the grading that we did of their Facebook page to see how kind of effective it was. But basically, the Facebook pages, they're good for broadcasting. There's a large welcome imagery, and you have those custom tabs. And you also have Facebook Insights, which gives you some sort of measurement over groups. But the cons are kind of, if you don't have a lot of time, the content takes time. And so somebody maybe in your office or some other office is going to be having to update and making sure fans are engaged. Even if you do a really great job of producing that content, most fans don't see your content. I saw a statistic that only 17% of your fans will see that. And really, a page is open to anybody. And so just because somebody likes your page doesn't mean that's necessarily a student you're influencing. And overall, it's just kind of hard to measure and monitor. Facebook Insights might be nice for kind of impressions and new likes and keeping track of your general audience, but it really doesn't help you dive into who that audience is, which we'll talk to a bit later. So one of the things we recommend is if you're looking for something for your admitted students, you should use a group to give the students a place where they can connect and engage. And if you don't give it to them, somebody else will be, whether it's a third party or a student. So here's a group from my alma mater, once again, Ohio University. And here's just a snapshot of one of the conversations of how important these groups are and these social communities are to their enrollment decision. Eric says he's trying to decide where he should go. He's transferring in as a second semester freshman. Anybody want to give me some reasons to choose OU? I'm from New York, so I don't really have any info other than the stuff online. And I think this is really important. He doesn't have any real info other than the stuff that the school sends me. The stuff that the school has online. So he's really looking for this kind of social confirmation, social proof of, hey, why should I come here? And he's probably looking to make some friends if he's coming from New York. So then the students end up chiming in and saying how the campus is amazing and everybody's super nice here. I totally going to school there. I totally agree that that's probably the two top reasons, just kind of fun reasons that why you should go there. So groups, breaking it down, that's a place for students to talk. You can be opened or closed for the groups, which is important if you're trying to keep the conversation only to the students you want it to. It also has notifications for students, those little red gems that pop up in the Facebook tab to see if students see when the last conversation is, and there's a group chat feature. The cons is there's really no metrics or reporting you can do. Well, we do have a little tool for you that we'll kind of we'll go over towards the end. You have to hand approve any members. It's once again kind of hard to monitor or manage by hand. You have to do that by hand. There's limited conversation space. There's kind of just one feed, and then there's a fragmentation of just kind of lots of different groups and pages that it's hard to differentiate which one is the official community for students that they would want to talk in. So the schools app is something that we use, and we've got about 90 schools that are using this to engage their admitted and current students. And I won't go too much into detail. This isn't the product pitch, but I just want to let you know that this is who we are, and we create these private Facebook communities. And this is a whole new way you can kind of take page and group engagement and take it to the next level with kind of a private app for the admitted students. And really kind of this becomes your whole social enrollment management tool, a theme that we'll be talking about a bit later. So inside the class of 2016, we analyzed 12 groups, and we took a day's worth of posts for all these 12 groups and pages. And we wanted to break down and see which is the most popular post students are talking about. So the top one you can see is students are talking about their major. When you guys are producing content and you're trying to start conversations, or students are starting conversations on the page, the top thing that they want to talk about is their future major, which makes total sense. But this is just great to have this data to kind of back it up. When you're thinking about what type of content to seed in the groups, or what kind of updates on a page, the number one thing students want to connect around is who is in the major like me, and then usually that kind of goes into a dialogue. The next highest thing is the hometown, students sharing where they are from, their location, their home state. And this is another great shout out you can have if there's particular areas where lots of students are coming from. If there's a certain segment in New York where you recruit from, you can say, hey, everybody from New York, say where you're from, or say where you're from and what your major is. And then you can see the just general kind of introduction posts, excitement posts, and then students seeking roommates. These are the most popular posts that are happening within the Facebook Class of 2016 communities. And then we also looked at the most engaging posts, and we counted as an engaging post as a post with 5 or more likes and comments. And we found people talking about their major, their hometown, and common interests. which didn't come, I think, as the most popular post, is how to get students most engaged. So we looked at groups and pages, and we took half of our sample from the class of 2016 was groups, half of this sample was pages, and we looked how many comments and likes there were. And we found a significant difference between the percentage of likes and comments of a groups versus page. And sorry about that typo error. I just had changed that graph. I guess that's how we do it live. But there's basically a huge amount of engagement between groups rather than pages. And we really see that as because of the notifications that groups have. So if your goal is to kind of generate a lots of student conversation and student activity, groups is probably the way to go. If your goal is to have a good messaging platform and a place where you can provide updates for your admissions office, maybe a page is something you can go. And it really depends on your kind of your resources and who's going to be managing that, who's going to be monitoring that, who's going to be doing that. We all have kind of limited time of the day, but that's a kind of breakdown of the layout of what people are doing. But the big takeaway I have is beware of the imposter groups, the kind of 75% of communities that are created that aren't created by any school. You can see right now, when I type in class of in my Facebook search, there's Washington University in St. Louis and Ohio University, who both have these kind of imposter groups where RoomSurf is selling their roommate matching service. And a lot of these communities have active, if the school doesn't have a community, this is an active community where students are talking. So this isn't something to ignore. It's something that you should make sure you kind of own your brand presence. And we broke down kind of a differentiation. There is a difference between the conversations that are happening on third-party sites and school sites. So what we can see here is that third-party sites have more likely to have undecided posts where students are saying, hey, I'm not sure if I should come here. There's more talk about kind of unofficial campus events, is, hey, what's the party scene like? And there's more talks about roommates, which we are pretty sure that because a lot of these third-party groups were this RoomSync, RoomSurf tool for marketing, that there was naturally a lot more roommate talk. But then when you look at the school-sponsored pages, there's a bunch more affirmative decision posts, students saying, yes, I am coming here. There's a lot more current student engagement talking with, hey, I want to talk with a current student. And then there's more talk about specific dorms of where you're going to look at. So these are the biggest kind of differences we had, and we thought it was interesting that kind of the medium really affects the message of what kind of community you guys are creating. So what presence should you have? It really depends. The type of school and your specific goals. I've talked from everything from Ivy League schools to community colleges to graduate schools, and it really depends. And these are the kind of 5 factors I go over with people: is how much time do you have to dedicate? How much money are you willing to invest? How savvy is your team with Facebook? Are they going to be able to understand the lingo and updating and managing it? Or is this going to be really tough for them? And then what kind of buy-in do I need internally, and how data-driven is my office and supervisors? Because if you're doing kind of general Facebook stuff with pages and groups, it's really tough to get super data-driven on how Facebook is kind of impacting enrollment. But we'll show you some tricks and some tools towards the end here about how you can measure that. So the takeaways: secure your brand real estate. Make sure you at least have a group or a page to welcome that incoming class. The medium affects the message on what type of community you have. And if you need data, Facebook won't cut it alone, but there are some tricks and some tools you can use. So talking about measuring success, here's 2 quotes that I like to say that are really important when you're getting into the measurement, which I know from a marketing standpoint, measurement isn't always easy, it isn't always fun, it isn't always sexy, but it is important. And just because you can measure something online doesn't necessarily mean it matters. And overall, the kind of sheer amount of data that is being generated isn't necessarily information. So don't get confused or overwhelmed by so many of the different things you can measure. You want to really focus in on what can you measure that matters. So I'll talk about something that does not matter. And this was really a huge thing that I was disappointed in the CASE conference. The CASE Social Media Conference is a great conference, a bunch of great people, but they spent 10 minutes, I kind of timed it actually, on talking about Klout. And if you're not familiar with Klout, Klout is a website actually just down the street in San Francisco that is trying to measure, a brand or a person's social influence. And some people are using Klout scores to say, hey, well, my Twitter account has X, Y, or Z Klout score. We're doing good or we're doing bad. And I have to say, this is not something you guys should be taking into consideration. It can be a okay thing to just say the general amount of engagement that's happening in our reach is this number, but overall, when you're looking at success metrics, even though this is a number, this isn't a number that really matters and is really going to impact your enrollment or what your mission is as kind of an institution. So clout should not count. Just had to do another one of my soapboxes. Facebook Insights. I'm sure you guys have kind of poured through this data on analyzing what posts are most engaging, which campaigns are increasing your likes. Once again, this data is something that's interesting, but it's not going to provide that kind of student-specific data of what's impacting your enrollment. So Facebook Insights can give you, some idea, but I wouldn't rely solely on these if you're looking for really good success metrics. And don't worry, I'm not just going to I'm going to give you some examples on what you guys can do for your success metrics, kind of two main things that are going to show your impact on enrollment, and then show you some of the benefits of using a private app. So once again, we have Loyola's Class 2016 page. We have our own version of Clout. It's called our Page Grader. And so if you guys are using a Class of 2016 or any group or page, I'm sorry, not a group. You can measure it, and we have this tool. You can go to grader.integral.com, and you can put your page in, and you can see how engaged is your overall community. So we broke down this past summer, we kind of created a framework for what is an engaged page and what would be a successful page. And so we came up with 5 metrics that we wanted to share. So the first metric that you want to be focusing on is your user conversion. You want to focus on the ability of you have your admitted class. How many percent of those admitted class do you get to become community members? And this is for any community. This is for your page, your group, or a private app, whatever it is you need to make sure you're getting the people that are on your admitted roster into your community. That's number one. Then the next step is that once you have somebody in the community, how many of your community members are actually participating? So the level of activity within the group, how many members actually participate. And this says group, this is actually more focused towards a page. The user validation, the likelihood that a student will receive a response to a post or comment. So if a student gets in there and then he makes a comment, he's going ahead and he's going to step up and say something, what's the likelihood he's going to actually get a response? And then the next part is the conversation, which I spoke to earlier. Is an engaging post is a post that has a certain amount of likes and comments after it. So when somebody is having a conversation, is it really engaging conversation? And the last thing we kind of measure is the post frequency. It's the group pulse based on the first post that was made and the 25th post that was made, and how much time has it taken between that? Has it been a month for 25 posts to take place, or was 25 posts did they take place in a day? And so here was Loyola's kind of metrics. They said we saw 96%, assuming that all their page likes were their admitted class, which I'm skeptical that's the case. 96% conversion rates. The student engagement was a 6. But when a student was engaging, so there was less student engagement on the page, but when a student did engage, there was a 50% likelihood that they did actually get a commenter back. The conversations were not that many, but there was a lot of post frequency, and this is actually measuring the page's post frequency and not the students. So overall, we get them a grade of a B, and you can go ahead and grade yours page if you want to at grader.integral.com, or download our metrics if you want to use this. And once again, this is kind of our version of Clout to say how engaged is your Facebook community. But the next step we're going to talk about is how is your Facebook communities actually impacting enrollment. And we're going to talk about 2 different ways you can do that. So there is a disconnect. Although most schools are using social media, we've been interviewing a lot of high-level VPs of enrollment management, directors of admissions, and 92% of them say social engagement is important. 86% of them say social media is used specifically for their enrollment and recruitment strategies, but only 33% of them are happy with their success metrics. So we definitely see that there is a huge need for schools to be more data-driven, kind of at that higher level of that these tools aren't just for fun. They're not just, like the social media thing isn't just some new shiny object marketing thing. This is an actual, a strategic enrollment tool for institutions. So what schools are really looking for is enrollment outcomes, that their deposited students are, in their Facebook community are more likely to deposit, they're more likely to enroll, they're less likely to kind of melt over the summer. This is just a snapshot of people who are using the schools app on Facebook or not using the schools app, students versus students who are not community members. Here's a snapshot of some of the different percentages, and you can actually do this with your Facebook page or a group, and we'll give you an Excel template that you can do that. But first I want to talk about Google Analytics and goals and Google UTM source. I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but I'm going to just give you a high level thing you should be doing. Right now, if your social media person isn't in touch with your web analytics person, those guys should be friends. Basically, you need to start tracking which traffic from social media sources are going onto your website and converting on certain points. So one of the things I love about Nebraska's admissions page is that all their calls to action with apply, check your admission status, make your deposit, learn about our majors, or schedule your campus visit. I love those kind of prominent calls to action. And also what I love is that their web team also tracks all the sources from Facebook or Twitter or anything that they're doing. They're tracking of where those sources are coming from in social media sites, and then what they're doing if they are applying, if they're making their deposit, if they're visiting. So they can really correlate, that this traffic and these people on these sites are doing these things. And you're going to do that through the Google UTM source. I'm not going to get too much detail, like I said, but basically you can tag any link on the internet with the UTM tag, and so this makes the link kind of like a smart link. And if you post in your page, hey, make sure you guys are depositing, that you can say that the source from that post came from the Facebook page. It came from the medium as your visit link 1, you could call it if you're doing different messaging, and the campaign content could be campus visit. So this is something that you guys can create, throughout the year as you're updating your Facebook pages or your groups, Twitter, even a banner advertising. You're tagging those links to tell your system, to tell Google Analytics that these people are coming from these sources. And then the second step is to have Google Analytics goals, which is really saying, okay, so these people came from these sources, and then they are converting and they are scheduling a campus visit, and you need to make sure you set up the goals in your Google Analytics. And once again, this might not be something that you're in charge of, but it's something you guys should be tracking of the different steps of the admissions funnel, is where these conversions are coming from. And it's something that we kind of track here at Integral, but it's also something that schools should be utilizing as well. So we actually made this little spreadsheet for schools who are looking to get a graph that's kind of like this to show their admits, and then they show their admits who are kind of Facebook fans or group members, and then their non-admits and their likelihood of enrollment. So we have this Excel spreadsheet. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to print out your admitted student roster, and you want to take their first name, their last name, whether they've enrolled or not, and then also you're going to want to probably grab their high school that they came from, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And then you're going to put if they have joined your Facebook page or not. So this is just a simple thing you can do to correlate, which these students who are on these presences are, their likelihood of enrollment. And you can think in theory, if you can get more students to join these presences, they're going to be more likely to enroll. So what you're going to want to do is not only the first and last name, but the high school that they came from, because a lot of students will change their middle name, or they will change their last name to their middle name, or have some sort of alias. And so it's important that you can kind of track that just because Sarah Smith might not be Sarah Smith in your enrollment, you can see, or in your kind of admitted student roster, you can see which high school she went to, and you can match up the data like this. And I've seen a few schools do this. I know Mike Petrov from Emerson uses this kind of enrollment predictor sheet, but I haven't seen as much as I would like to see when they're kind of looking for kind of data-driven support of why these presences are important or how they're impacting enrollment. So once again, why you need this is that Facebook data is really limited. You don't have a student's, when somebody likes your page or is in your group, you don't really have their hometown, their planned major, their times that they visited the community, the number of friends they've made, the questions they've asked, the conversation started, what interests they have on campus. All this data is really kind of limited and locked up within Facebook. But what we offer is, a private social network. We really recommend that if you have a place where you can actually uncover your students, you can see who Sarah is. Sarah's from Columbus, Ohio. She is majoring in social work. She's visited the community 10 times. She's made 12 friendships. and she's asked one question and started 3 conversations. You can also see, kind of where her interests are and who this student is as a person. You can see here that this is kind of the individual student tracking that's possible with different private social networks. There's a lot of different ones people are using. Our schools are really happy with the schools app if you ever want to talk to some of our clients. And then you can actually download this whole list of engagement activity that's happening on Facebook. And once you have this list of all the engagement that's happening online, you can correlate that engagement with your enrollment outcomes. So here is just a snapshot of something we've done of taking down ethnicity and users versus non-users who are active in the community and showing the kind of difference between their enrollment rates by ethnicity. And you can see some interesting kind of patterns emerge. And we've been doing this data analysis for about a year, and the biggest thing we found is that Facebook friends, the amount of Facebook friends a student has that are also admits to that school is going to directly predict the yield for that school. So when you're looking at success metrics and your kind of goals for your Facebook communities, is a lot of people are still focusing on likes, but what's more important than the number of likes you have on a page or the kind of group members you have is the amount of friends a student is making. And there's a lot of literature to kind of back up the support to say that students that have more friends in college or have a strong support network are going to be more likely to persist in school. And the same is true for the enrollment. So we've looked at almost every single type of kind of correlation and activity that could happen on an app. And the biggest thing we found is that the more friendships you have, the more likely you are going to be to enrolling. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about your strategies. So in conclusion, let's see how I'm doing on time. Great, I'm a little bit over. But the conclusion, focus, don't get distracted by shiny objects. Best practices are still up in the air. If anybody tells you they have the magic bullet or the secret formula to social media success, they're probably lying to you because everybody's still trying to figure it out. Make sure you reserve your space and start collecting data now. When you kind of track which students are in your page and which students are enrolling, you can begin to bring that to your boss and to get buy-in on your social media efforts. And really, we think that social enrollment management is the future. Students are online, they want to connect with schools, they want to connect with each other, and you should provide a place that's really going to kind of maximize that for your enrollment efforts. So that is kind of what's going on Facebook from our standpoint in admissions marketing. If you have any questions, would love to go ahead and tweet those out. And if you want any further insight in kind of our research or want to partner with any research, we'd love to partner with your school and do some insight into your pages or groups or enrollment analysis. This is what we kind of live and breathe over here. So shoot me a note at bcroke@integral.com or blog.integral.com to keep up with our kind of latest and greatest. So now I will open it up to any questions.